So a couple of weeks ago, Charley and I sat down and chatted through some of our favorite single player story games. And a lot of you lovely lot had some comments and suggestions of your own ones. So I've gone through those. I've got my pal Henry here.
Yep.
Hi, Henry.
Hi.
And we thought we would have a look through your recommendations and chat about why you're right and maybe why you're wrong.
You're probably right though. First up, we got Darren Herrick, who came in hot with quite a few good ones in his list. But the one that caught our eye, because I think a lot of people overlook this title, was NieR Automata, which lets you play as a robot called 2B. And
or not 2B?
No, definitely 2B.
Oh.
I don't know where that's come from. It's much more of an action RPG style. So if you're into slightly tougher games where, you know, seconds count in combat, it certainly offers that kind of challenge. But as Darren pointed out, this is a really strong narrative-led experience at the same time. Funnily enough, I think quite a lot of Souls-like games they do play into that in their strengths. You know, you can think of games like Sekiro and Elden Ring where the story's not really communicated to you in the typical sense. There's not like cutscene after cutscene and character dialogue and, you know, back and forth between the protagonist and the enemy, all that. You're sort of left to your own devices to explore the world and figure it out for yourself. And that's a key way to explore the narrative in NieR, especially with the fact that there's so many endings to go through. I think there's like over 30 of them or something like that.
Loads.
A stupid amount, which means that the replayability of the game is massive at the same time. So if you're looking to spend a bit of money on a game, you know, you're definitely going to get your money's worth with NieR Automata. It's a good shout, and it's definitely up there for games that challenge you with the mechanics, but also challenge you with its narrative in discovering more about the world. Yeah,
discovering, like you say, through different choices that you make that dictate those different possible endings. A lot of those endings and a lot of the narrative as well, not to spoil anything, is very surprising, or can be. So many mysteries await you with NieR, but it is a really interesting narrative for sure.
Plus, I think it's just got loads of cool set pieces, and the character design for all the enemies and for 2B, just really interesting. If you're into like anime and manga, it certainly has touches of that, which I think you'd appreciate. But yeah, it's a great game and not one to miss.
I mentioned this briefly at the end of the last video, and a lot of people also picked up on this, loads of them. So Darren and also Ninchiri and a couple of others mentioned Skyrim. One of my...
The Skyrim. Skyrim-o.
Just Skyrim. No,
just
the...
straight up Skyrim.
Lose the.
Skyrim was sort of like a, you know, tectonic shift in gaming in a way when it launched. It changed everything.
Obviously, you know how big they were able to make it by that time, a lot of the improvements they put in.
The tech allowed them to go harder in areas that they were already exploring.
Yeah.
You know? It's like if they had developed Oblivion on, you know, that same platform, it would have been like Skyrim. But Skyrim benefited from the tech of the time.
Bringing it back to the narrative though, I do believe that, you know, the mainline story is such a relatable one, or such a one that people seek a lot in media, is this like unknown hero rising through, you know, adversity or whatever, and it's gorgeous. But also, we spoke about this in a recent video as well about the Elder Scrolls Online, and I think it's true to Skyrim in that there is so much background lore and background narrative writing and interconnecting stories across the Elder Scrolls that but that really feel like they're alive in Skyrim, like these political fights that are happening, these grand, you know, battles, alongside like more niche and like targeted inner workings, like with the Thieves Guilds or anything like that. I think just having that all up makes for a really fun and super interesting story.
Yeah, it's a really dense world, despite being so large that you could travel to any pocket of it and not really know what's going to unfold on that particular play session. You know, for people that just stick to main quests, they're going to be so satisfied with the really strong narrative that's there. But if you're playing everything there is to offer, or just the things that you're interested in outside of the main quest, you're really just fleshing out what your own story and what your own narrative as the Dragonborn is going to be. And yeah, although it, like you said, it is that hero's journey, is quite a typical tale. I think the way that they allow you to weave in and out of that whenever you choose to, if you want to pick up some side quests here or focus on just getting insanely strong over there, or even deciding to choose some evil options. I mean, it's an RPG at the end of the day, and it's a Bethesda RPG, so you could totally play it however you want to, and the world feels like it does reflect those choices you make as well. So it changed the game, and we're all better off for it.
There's a reason I've got over 1,000 hours on it, so
Plus,
that's
it's
not
in
for
Game
nothing.
Pass. Go play it if you haven't already. I mean, if you think you might want to play some other games, maybe don't start Skyrim, because it's going to absorb your entire life. But yeah, it's definitely there in Game Pass. Check it out when you're ready.
This next one, Lucky RS said, has some incredible stories if you are willing to spend the time to find them. And I think they're so right for saying that, because if you give Starfield some time, there is so much to uncover. So much similarly to Skyrim and also to a lot of the mainline Fallout games. Like, you have that incredible Bethesda narrative, like that is so core to those massive CDs, and that is reflected in Starfield as well. It's the perfect time to kind of check it out, as well as we do get some new game updates coming soon as well.
Yep.
But I'd love to hear what you think, Henry, about Loki's comment and Starfield.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with them. I mean, the more time you spend with Starfield, the more you're going to get out of it. It's literally a galaxy to explore. And as you'd expect with what we now understand as the Bethesda DNA, when it comes to RPGs, you know, you look at games like Skyrim, you look at games like Fallout 4, where there's an overarching story and there are factions at play that all have their own moral ambiguities, and it's up to you as the player to identify, where do you exist in this conversation? Where do you exist with this relationships with different people and factions? And Starfield offers some really cracking stories, especially for people that like to play a bit on the bad side of the law. One of my favorite storylines in it is, I'm not going to spoil too much there, but it is to do with the Crimson Fleet, who are basically the pirates of this world, the space pirates. And they really do take you on this incredible journey that ripples throughout the relationships you have with the rest of the factions, as you'd expect. You can't be friends with everyone. Luckily, though, you can play the game multiple times to experience different things. Starfield has this spontaneity about it, which I think separates it slightly from other games. Obviously, you could do that in Skyrim. You could go off the beaten path and say, oh, there's a little like opening in that, you know, forest over there. I wonder what's through that. In Starfield, it is amplified to a ridiculous degree because there are just so many different planets to just drop in on, and they spawn in these procedural events that can happen wherever you are. I mean, the deeper you get into the story, the more of that you will see, and also you sort of start to learn how you can make them happen more often to get even deeper flavor of what's happening in the world of Starfield. Plus, it's a great game all round, not just for its narrative, but also there's so much to do. I mean, shipbuilding, there's crafting, there's base building, there's dogfighting, there's so much. There's powers. I mean, this game really does tick a lot of boxes for people who are sci-fi geeks, but also just RPG fans in general, because the role-playing aspect of this is firing on all cylinders. So I absolutely love it. And like you say, yeah, it's just getting better with updates. Plus, we're getting some DLC on the way pretty soon with Shattered Space coming out. I think it's this year, which, although is not in Game Pass, you can obviously play the base game of Starfield in Game Pass. And if you do have Game Pass, you'll get Shattered Space at a little bit of a discount. Cheeky. Nicky Bob Games had a few really great suggestions. Obviously, I'm a big fan of both the Star Wars ones that they mentioned, but they also put in both of the Plague Tale games. The second one in particular, though, Requiem, really does hit quite hard. I mean, visually, an absolutely stunning achievement.
Oh, yeah.
It was unlike anything I'd really experienced on Series X before. The density of the world around you was really just beautiful, even though it is an incredibly dark game at the same time. I mean, there are some really horrible things happening in the world that Amicia and Hugo live in, but despite that, it almost contrasted it really well. There are moments in Requiem where you do get to pause and just admire the beauty of it. And then there are the moments where you have to run and there are millions and millions of rats chasing after you or eating people around you. And that itself really plays quite well into the narrative of this game, I'd say, because it is almost that there's a similar theme going with the story, in that there's beauty in the relationship that Hugo and Amicia have, but that it's also strained, and there are horrors that go along with that, and it's an amazing sibling story to experience, and one of this sort of coming of age of Amicia and stepping into this different role that she now has. I mean, I would obviously recommend playing the first game before you try Requiem, because it obviously sets up Requiem very well. But yeah, these games are some of the best out there, I'd say, for narrative, and it's hard to do a sequel and do it as well, if not better, than the original. But I think they really accomplished that with Plague Tale Requiem.
I think yeah, with both of the Plague Tale games, I love it when there's like some you know, a hint of history that's obviously based around quite historically accurate times, and then they just added, you know, loads of cool rats and powers into the mix of that. So I really enjoy that kind of contrast between historical, logical, and then some splice of magic as well, and what that kind of represents throughout the story too. The second one, it's definitely a bit more action focused. We've got a lot more to explore, like you said, Henry. Like it's a really big world, and you do kind of venture off into bigger parts of France in the second game, and meeting new characters that spreads a lot more of the story, like branches to follow, basically.
I'd say for people that played like Hellblade 1, there's a lot that you're going to really appreciate in both of these games as well. It is definitely like the levels are basically a means to progress the narrative, and they do it really thematically. And yeah, like you said, the first game, there's a bit less action, and that's because they're both younger. They're both inexperienced in this newly horrified world where they're basically on the run. And then in the second game, they're battle hardened, they're tougher, and so you get to play a bit more with, like, not necessarily wielding swords and weaponry, but you know, Amicia becomes a bit more confident in her own ability to tackle, you know, the adversity that she and Hugo are now going to face. And yeah, it's a great pair of games. You won't be able to play Plague Tale Innocence on Game Pass anymore, but Requiem is, and Innocence is on sale quite often. So check that one out when it goes on sale, or just grab it now because it's well worth the price anyway. Yeah.
I'd like to publicly apologize to Dandy, who said they're at minute 3. And if you forget to mention Greedfall, they will be mad.
Ooh.
And lo and behold, Charley and I did not mention Greedfall. So let's talk about it now.
Yeah, let's talk about it now.
Dandy,
I've not played it.
Okay.
Me personally. But I've seen a lot of it.
From me?
Yeah.
Well, Henry, Greedfall is an action RPG, and you play as a character who's arrived on an island where you're interacting with, you know, the native settlers, the inhabitants of said island, as well as new political powers who are coming to claim said island and the treasures and riches that it possesses. Now, a lot of that so far is quite, you know, historical and quite lifelike. We can imagine what that would have looked like kind of in the pioneering times, I guess they call it. But with Greedfall, there's also a wee sprinkle of magic, like we were kind of talking about with Plague's Tale. You have ancient powers and secrets and yeah, this like magic that you uncover and can then possess, and then it almost leads you to kind of think, well, oh, what's important to me and how do I covet that, and therefore how do I play this out with all the other parties that are interested in what the island can possess and what you all want for yourself, basically.
Yeah, it sounds really cool. I mean, letting the player decide as you've washed up on this mystery island.
Yeah.
What's the impact you're going to have? What's the impact the world's going to have on you and the characters? You know, how are you going to feel walking away from all this after you've chosen your particular path? But hey, I mean, wielding magical powers is always fun, and you know, it sounds like it must be quite a deep, impactful story. You know, covering like colonization and yeah, I'm into trying something like that. And well, Dandy must be onto something, because apparently it's so good that they're making another one, which is also coming to Xbox Series X and S.
Nice.
So we'll keep an eye out for that one. We'll make sure we include it next time, Dandy. Sorry, mate.
Something that I think sometimes gets overlooked is the narrative in horror games.
Oh yeah.
And Henry and I are massive horror game fans, if you weren't aware. And STZ also seems to be one too, because they listed a whole bunch of games. So thank you for the suggestions. But also Amnesia, The Bunker, was one on their list too. Amnesia, the series in general, is quite renowned in for horror games as you know, kind of breaking boundaries and making that atmospheric, in the mind, psychological horror, like actually experiencing like trauma and fear in first person for the first time with Amnesia. And the game has kind of gone a lot of different places since then, which is cool. So there's a fun narrative that you kind of follow in Amnesia, the first game, where you're kind of piecing together your character that you are and finding out about yourself.
As the name suggests, you had amnesia, so you literally had to piece it together. You couldn't remember a single thing. And yeah, The Dark Descent was an interesting experience for me when I first played it, because I'd never played a game where you had to be so passive. You literally have no means to fight back. And it's, you know, survival horror is the genre, and the survival aspect of it was just quite brutal at times. And I was sort of pulling my hair out thinking, how the hell do I get through this? But it's a game that's supposed to make you feel like that. You're supposed to feel helpless and supposed to feel oppressed in this, you know, in this particular mansion that you're exploring. And I love the almost Metroidvania aspect to it as well, you know, going through different areas to try and find a key that you might need to open up a certain area, or working levers, or, you know, mechanical aspects of it to access where you're supposed to go. And, you know, it always feels like you need to get out. You realize this is a bad place and I need to get out. That's your first feeling that you innately have. And I think with The Bunker, that's amplified a lot, because it's a smaller space as well. So you're trapped in there with something. You don't know what, but now you really, really feel you have to get out. And that's even harder to do when there's less room there. Even though you do actually, I think you have a gun in this one. There's not many bullets for it probably, but you know, you could sparingly use it. I imagine it's probably not that useful, to be fair.
On a big scary ghosty thing.
So, I mean, it sounds like another great experience from that team. So it's a really good shout. And yeah, you're right. Horror games, they do carry some of the best narratives out there, because they go to those darker places and allow you to experience, you know, the darker part of human life and human emotions and psychology. And Amnesia's a great pick franchise wide. But yeah, I think I'd like to try The Bunker out, because having that enclosed space sounds like a really interesting experiment to put yourself through mentally, I think.
But yeah, what's some of your favorite horror game stories? Now I want to know.
Oh yeah, just horror in particular, let us know.
Yeah,
I'm sure we probably have missed a bunch of comments, so if there's a game in particular you feel strongly about that we haven't already covered, drop it in the comments as well.
Yes,
make sure to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one, because we might pick your comment next. Okay, be nice. Yeah,
thanks for everyone who comments. We'll see you very soon.
Bye.